Hi guys, for math today, what we'll be working on is rounding numbers to the nearest 10. So before we start, let's make sure we have a dry erase board and marker, as well as your student book open to page 77. So go ahead and pause until you have those things ready. So a dry erase board, and we need page 77 in our student book. All right. So before we talk about rounding, first we are going to talk about estimation. When you estimate something, you are not finding the exact answer. For example, sometimes when I go grocery shopping, um, I think in my head and I try to add in my head how much everything is costing me. Now, what I do if something costs $2.85, I think in my mind that's close to $3. I don't try to mentally add $2.85 and then my next item that costs $3.10. I say, hey, that's pretty close to just $3 also. So when you're rounding, you're not looking for the exact answer. You're looking for an estimate, something close. You also may use rounding. Let's say you're measuring and you're trying to figure out about how much room you're going to need for maybe your new desk. You might just round it and say, I need 10 feet of space. Maybe it didn't come out to exactly 10 feet, but you're just using rounding. Okay, so like we said, we might use rounding when we're measuring, when we're shopping, things like that. What we do when we round is we want to find something called a landmark number or a benchmark number, sometimes it's called. So it's a friendly number that makes it easier to round to. And we're rounding to the nearest tens. We're going to use the multiples of tens like 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and so on. So what we want to do is if we're rounding the number 22 to the nearest 10, what I always do is write the number. I underline the number in the tens place, and I look to the right. If I see a 5 or higher, I'm going to round it up to the next benchmark number. So when we say the benchmarks, 22 is between 20 and 30. Those are the two friendly tens, multiples of tens that it's in between. Now, the number that's right in between the midpoint is 25. So numbers that are 25 or higher are going to round to 30. But since this number, 21, 22, it's not to the midpoint, there's a 2 there, we're going to round it down to 20. All right, let's try a number like 347 and try to round that number to the nearest 10. So on your dry erase board, I want you to write the two benchmark or landmark numbers. So this number is between 340, so I look at the number in the tens place, that 4, and I keep the 3, so 340 and 350. Now, the midpoint, the number that's in the middle, would be 345. Make your board look like my screen. Now, since there's that 7 there, that's going to tell me that we're going to round it up. And so instead of 340, we're going to round it up to 350. 347 would be right here on our number line, and that is closer to 350 than it is 340. Okay, let's try again with the number 32. So 32, I underline the tens place and I look to the right at the ones place. And I think about our benchmark numbers. Go ahead and write this down on your board. So our two multiples of 10 would be 30 and 40, the numbers it's in between. And our midpoint is 35. So remember, if it's 5 or higher in the ones place, we would round it up. But since this one has a 2 in the ones place, 32, it's closer to 30. It's closer to 30 than it is to 40. So 32 rounds down to 30. All right, next, go ahead and try this on your dry erase board. So 67, our two landmark numbers would be 60. It's between 60 and 7. Okay, now remember, I underline the tens place, I look to the right, and it's a 7. Okay, now if we remember 65, if it has a 5 or higher, we're going to round it up to 70. So 67 would be, there's our midpoint 65. Any numbers with 5 or more, 65 or higher, we're going to round up to the 70. Okay, let's try another one. Write this on your board. Okay, so 44, we underline the tens place. So our benchmark numbers are 40 and 50. When we look to the right, we see a 4 there. We look in the ones place and see a 4. And remember, the midpoint is 45. This number has a 4. Since it has a 4, we're going to round it down to 40 because it's closer to the 40 than it is 50. Remember, if we see a 5 or more, we're going to round it up to 50. But since this one has a 4 in the ones place, it rounds down to 40. Okay, let's try this number, 85. So then maybe you're wondering, okay, the 5 is right in the middle, so I don't know if it's closer to 80 or 90. It's in the middle. So what you do here is anytime you have a number in the midpoint, when there's a 5, we're going to round up. Okay, so we're going to round it up to 90. So again, when there's a 5 or higher in the ones place, you round it up to that next benchmark number, 90. Okay. Next, 19. Okay, so we underline the tens place, look to the right, and we see a 9. So let's think, are we going to round it down to 10 or up to 20? Well, remember, if it's 5 or higher, we're going to round up. So since it's greater than 15, it's here at 19, we're going to round it up to 20. So that 1 bumps up to a 20. The 10 rounds up to a 20. Okay, next. Write this on your board. So 103. Now, what you have to remember is there's a 0 in the tens place, but really there are 10 tens in 103. So you have to look at this 10 here. So we're going to think 100, our benchmark numbers are 100 and 110. So kind of think of it as 10 tens, and then this would be 11 tens. Okay, our midpoint would be 105. And again, when we look at that 0 there and we look to the right in the ones place, there's a 3. So that would make it below the midpoint. It's at 103. So it rounds down to 100. Okay, our next one, our two benchmark numbers. Let's think of what they would be. So again, we have to look at, since there's a number in the hundreds place, there's 12 tens here. And then if we were to round up, that would be 13 tens or 130. And then we look, and to the right, we see a 5. And that's right in the middle. So see, do you remember what to do if it's right in the middle, if it has a 5? Okay, you should have said round up. Okay, so 5 or more, we round up. 4 or less, round down. So this one's going to go up to 130. Okay, so hopefully we're starting to understand the rounding. So we underline the number in the tens place. We look to the number in the right in the ones place. And if it's 5 or more, we're going to round it up to the next 10. And if it's 4 or less, we're going to round it down, okay, to the lesser 10. What I'd like you to do next is go to page 77. Go ahead and pause if you need to. And we're going to work on a few story problems here. So on page 77, what we have to do is come up with some fill in the blank, make our story problem, and then show our work. So I'm going to help you out with one or two, and then you'll do the rest on your own. So number 1 says, Sarah has 35 something in her top drawer. She has 28 something in her bottom drawer. How many are there in all? So think about, if you see the words in all, what type of story problem is this? If you said addition, you are correct. So we have to think, okay, 35, let's say she has 35 socks in her top drawer. And she has 28 blue socks, or no, why don't we say shorts, pair of shorts in her bottom drawer. So how many items in all does she have in her top drawer and her bottom drawer? So what we would do is take 35 plus 28. Okay, now this unit will also be talking about different addition strategies. So you can use any strategy that you like. I'm just going to use standard algorithm to solve this one. So I'm going to take 8 plus 5 is 13. 3, 4, 5, 6, so 63. Okay, the next one, number 2. Tim spent $26 for a something. You can make it up. He spent $18 for a something else, whatever you like. How much did he spend in all? So again, since it says in all, you're going to add. So maybe he spends $26 for a, I don't know, a basketball. And then he spends $18 for a soccer ball. How much does he spend in all? Okay, so then you tell how much he spent. So I'll let you solve that one on your own. Number 3, Isabel had 74 something. She gave 26 of them to a friend. How many did she have left? Okay, so if she's giving some away, and I see that the word left, that makes me think of what operation? What are you going to do on this problem? If you said subtraction, you were correct. So you're going to take 74 and minus 26. Maybe she had 74 bouncy balls or 74 pieces of Halloween candy. Anything you want, you get to make it up. But then she gives away, so we know that that's subtraction. And then what we've talked about before, we really have to remember if we're doing standard algorithm, is if you see a 6 and there's a 4 at the top, if you have 4 of something, you can't take away 6, so you have to regroup. So we're going to take a 10 here and put the 10 in the ones place. We're just going to take a 10, put it in the ones. Now you have a bigger number and you can subtract. So now 14 minus 6 is 8, and 6 minus 2 is 4. And then, so 48, whatever we're talking about, pieces of candy or cookies or bouncy balls, whatever you wanted to put in your problem. All right, I'll let you do number 4 on your own and think about it. If Juan baked 4 dozen, ooh, this is a 2-step problem. Maybe we should do this together. But then the dog eats 19, how many are left? Okay, so what you have to remember is 4 dozen. A dozen equals how many? Do you remember? If you said 12, you're correct. So 12 times 4, or you could do 12 added 4 times. That equals 10, 20, 30, 40, 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay, that's 48. But then he eats 19 of them. So your second step is to subtract 19. How many are left? Maybe cookies. Go ahead and solve that. I'll let you solve that on your own after I helped a little bit with the 4 dozen. Don't forget, if you're doing standard algorithm and you see this 8 minus 9, you have to remember to regroup. Okay, and then for number 5, I'll let you do this one on your own. We saw 100 to something, and then 24 of them flew away. How many were left? Okay, so they're going away, and there's some left. Maybe it's birds because it says flying. Okay, so I'll let you solve that for number 5. When you're all finished, make sure you take a picture or a video of your work and submit it in Buzz. I hope we're doing well with the rounding. If you have any questions at all, you're like, I'm not really understanding what to do, what the benchmark numbers are, please ask, okay? And then turn in page 77. Thanks for